Happy Friday, second grade. Today we're on lesson 15. We're going to be fixing run-on sentences and sequencing events in a story. Let's get started. We're going to start our work for today on page 65 in your packet. On this page, we're reviewing how to fix run-on sentences. So remember we talked about two ways to fix a run-on sentence. You can either turn it into two separate sentences by putting one idea from the sentence and then a period, and then the second idea from the sentence in a separate sentence. So that's one way. The other way to fix a run-on sentence is to get rid of some of the repeating words in the run-on sentence and keep it just one sentence. Today on this activity page, you get to choose which one of those ways you would like to fix each sentence. It might depend based on what the sentence says. Let's start by taking a look at number one. Number one says, take the trash to the trash can, bring the paper to the trash can. So let's start with our first method of turning this into two sentences. So on these blanks, I would look for the first idea. Take the trash to the trash can, bring the paper to the trash can. It sounds like the first idea is take the trash to the trash can. So I'm going to write that, capital T, take the trash. You can be writing this on your paper while I'm writing, or you can wait till I'm done. Take the trash to the trash can. And then I put my period after can. So it should look like this. Take the trash to the trash can. After I write that first part of the sentence, then I need to write the second part that they include. Bring the paper to the trash can. So I'm going to leave a space, and then I'm going to write a capital B, bring the paper to the trash can, period at the end. So if we use our first method, it's going to look like this. We have two sentences. Take the trash to the trash can, bring the paper to the trash can. For this one, I really liked that way of doing that. It seemed really easy. But if I wanted to use the other way of keeping it one sentence, I would look for the words that are repeating. So I see to the trash can, looks like it happens twice in number one. I only need to say that once. So I might say that at the end. So to keep this one sentence, I might say, take the trash and bring the paper to the trash can. Now that run-on sentence is one sentence. Take the trash and bring the paper to the trash can. To me, this one sounds a little weird, but it does still work. I think for number one, writing it as two sentences, it seems like it makes the most sense. But again, you can choose whatever makes the most sense to you. Let's try number two together. Number two says, the soup was hot, the soup was tasty. Okay, so if we try the first way, making this two sentences, I want to put the period where my new idea starts. So I'm going to say, the soup was hot, period. Capital T, the soup was hot, period. So that's the first part. The soup was hot. I put a period at the end. Now I start with that next idea. The soup was tasty, period. So that's option 1 of turning it into 2 sentences. The soup was hot. The soup was tasty. And to me, that still sounds kind of repetitive. It sounds like I'm sort of saying the same thing twice. So for this sentence, I actually think keeping it as one sentence would make the most sense. But again, it's up to you. Whichever one you want to do is fine. So if I was going to combine this into one sentence, I noticed that they repeat the soup 2 times. So I'm going to get rid of the second time that they say the soup, and I'm only going to say that once. The soup. We know the soup was 2 things. What 2 words described the soup? Tell me out loud. Good, hot and tasty. So instead of saying the soup was hot, the soup was tasty, I can just say the soup was hot and tasty. And there we go. Now it's not a run-on sentence anymore. The soup was hot and tasty. So you can write that however you would like to. I'd like you to go ahead and try number 3, 4, and 5 on your own. You can pick the option that you like the most to fix the sentence, whether that's making it 2 sentences or keeping it 1 sentence and getting rid of the repeating words. Press pause on the video, complete number 3 through 5, and then come back and join me for the next page. Great job fixing those run-on sentences. They sound much better now. Let's take a look at these other review activities. We're going to talk about apostrophes. So for numbers 6 through 8, they want us to draw a circle around the correct way to write the contraction. Remember that a contraction is turning 2 words into 1 shorter word and getting rid of some of the letters. The apostrophe, remember an apostrophe looks like a comma, but it's floating up in the air. The apostrophe goes where you took out letters. So wherever the missing letters are, that's where you want to put the apostrophe. Let's take a look at number 6. They're trying to get you to find the correct spelling of wouldn't. Tell me out loud what 2 words go together to make the contraction wouldn't. Good job. Would not. So looking at wouldn't, what letter is missing from would not? The O. So you want to put the apostrophe where the O would have gone. Which one? 1, 2, or 3 has that? Good. The third one. Wouldn't. Like this. You should have circled the wouldn't that looks like this. Nice job. Go ahead and circle the correct spelling of the contraction aren't for number 7. Aren't. What 2 words make up the contraction aren't? Good. Are not. So for aren't, you should have circled the one that looks like this. That was the first one. Last one, number 8, is the contraction won't. Won't is a very strange contraction. They change everything. It's very odd. Won't is the words will not combined. Notice that the ending has not, just like the other ones, so you're going to want to see the apostrophe in the same place as number 6 and number 7. Go ahead and circle the correct spelling of won't. You should have circled the one that looks like this. Oftentimes in contractions, the apostrophe goes between the N and the T. Nice work. The last part of this page today says that we need to write the proper and common nouns showing what belongs to the person named in the proper noun. Those instructions are kind of weird. What they want you to do is read this sentence and they want you to turn it into a possessive. Remember, possessives are when we put the name with an apostrophe S and then the thing that belongs to them. So let's read number 9. Marissa has a bike. What does Marissa have? Good, a bike. So whose bike is it? Marissa's. So we're going to write Marissa's bike. We write the name Marissa just like they have it. We can copy their spelling. Then I'm going to add an apostrophe S. Marissa's. Now it looks like this. Then I write what belongs to her. Marissa's bike. You should write Marissa's bike on the line. Go ahead and try number 10 on your own while I'm writing down the answer. When I'm done, you can check your work. Number 10 says, Jackson has a snake. Think about what belongs to Jackson and add that apostrophe S to his name. Okay, ready to check your work? Jackson's snake. We added an apostrophe S. Nice work. Let's move on to our story for today. Our story for today is called The Attack on Washington, D.C. Go ahead and flip backwards in your packet to page 61 and follow along with your finger while I read out loud. Chapter 5, The Attack on Washington, D.C. We see a bold word on this page. That bold word is Capitol. That word is. Capitol is the building in Washington, D.C. where Congress meets. Listen to this page to see why was President Madison upset. In August of 1814, President Madison was upset. 2 years had passed. The war was still going on. The U.S. Army had won some battles, and it had lost some battles. The British had landed an army near Washington, D.C. British soldiers were marching. Madison hoped the U.S. Army would be able to stop them. At the time, Washington, D.C. was a young town. Some buildings had just been finished, such as the Capitol. Others were not finished yet. Still, it was an important place. It was where the U.S. Congress met to make laws. It was where the Supreme Court met. So, why was President Madison upset? Look back on this page and find the answer. Tell me out loud. Good job. He was upset because 2 years had passed and the war was still going on. We had won some battles, but we had also lost some battles, so we weren't a clear winner yet. He was also upset because the British had landed an army near Washington, D.C., and they were marching. That means they were coming to attack our capital. Go ahead and read the caption to yourself that's on this page, on page 47. That's what the Capitol building looked like back in this time, back in 1810. On this page, we see 3 bold vocabulary words. Let's go over those before we begin reading. The first phrase is support the troops. Supporting the troops means providing encouragement and sometimes also food and supplies to the soldiers who are fighting in the war. Our next word is defeat. That word is defeat is a loss in battle. The last word at the bottom of this page is panic. Panic means to become very scared. Let's read the first two paragraphs to see what President Madison planned to do. So we know that the British soldiers are marching into Washington, D.C. Listen to hear what President Madison plans to do about it. The President's house was a special house that had been constructed for the President. Today, it is called the White House. It is called the... It was only about 10 years old at the time. It was home to President Madison and his wife, Dolly. President Madison was aware that there was going to be a big battle outside the city. He planned to go support the troops. He ordered some soldiers to protect Mrs. Madison in the President's house. Then he jumped on his horse and rode off. So what did President Madison plan to do? Good. He planned to go support the troops in the big battle outside the city. Listen to the rest of this page. Let's find out how the battle went. The battle outside the city did not go well. The U.S. Army was beaten. People quickly found out about the defeat. The Army had lost. The British were coming. People in the city panicked. They grabbed their things and ran away. The roads were jammed with people and carts. So, how did the battle go? Right? It did not go well. We lost and the British were coming. Let's look at the caption on page 49. This says the President's house was the home of the U.S. President. So this building is what the White House looked like back during the War of 1812. Go ahead and turn to the next page. On this page we have one vocabulary word in bold. That word is flee. That word is... Flee means to leave quickly. Let's read this page to see what Mrs. Madison had to do and why. President Madison could not get back to the President's house. His wife, Dolly, was left there with servants and soldiers. The soldiers ran away. Mrs. Madison could not stay in the President's house. The British would be there soon. She had to flee. Mrs. Madison hoped to take as much with her as she could. But which things should she take? There were so many fine things in the President's house. She loved a lamp that hung in one room, but there was no way she could take that. It was too heavy. She had a big closet of fancy dresses. She loved them too, but there were more important things for her to carry away. What did Mrs. Madison have to do, and why? Good. She had to flee because the British were coming and they were going to attack. What did she hope to do while she was fleeing? Good. She hoped to take as much with her as she could. She wanted to bring the most important things from the President's house with her so that the British wouldn't get them. Let's turn to the next page. We have one bold vocabulary word on this page, and that word is trunk. That word is... A trunk is a large suitcase. Let's read to see what Mrs. Madison was able to bring with her. In the end, Mrs. Madison left most of her own things behind. Just like we would in a fire. Usually you run out the door as quick as you can. You leave almost everything behind. Instead, she carried away things that were important to the American people. She grabbed papers and letters. She stuffed as many of them as she could into a trunk. Mrs. Madison was ready to leave. Then she remembered one last thing. It was a painting of George Washington. She did not want the painting to fall into the hands of the British. She called one of President Madison's trusted servants, Paul Jennings, for help. There was no time to take the painting gently from its frame. Jennings and the other servants broke the frame so they could quickly remove the canvas painting. They carefully rolled the canvas like a tube and carried it away. "It is done," said Dolly Madison. Then she ran out the door to safety. So they were really rushing out of there in a hurry. What was Mrs. Madison able to take with her? Look in the story and tell me everything that she brought with her when she left the president's house. Good job. She carried away the things that were important to the American people, like papers and letters, and the painting of George Washington. All right, go ahead and turn to page 67 in your packet. On page 67, you're going to use the story that we just read to put the sentences on this page in the correct order. There are 5 events, so we're going to number them 1 through 5. Again, make sure you use the story to help you. Look and see which of these events happened first. Whichever event happened first, you're going to write a number 1 next to it. Whichever event happened last is going to get the number 5. Everything in between is going to get numbers 2, 3, and 4. Go ahead and put these events in the correct order. That is your last activity for today. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you back on Monday for our next lesson. Bye-bye.